Welcome to the Loud Whisper Takeover podcast. Today I have a very special guest. She started off as a professional dancer, but is now using dance in a very particular way to coach people, to make them tap into their full potential, to make them shine even brighter than they are already shining right now, to really understand abundance and so much more. She has traveled and worked across the world. She's currently based in Luxembourg, but is coaching clients internationally. Please welcome Lisy Butterfly. Hi, Lisy. How are you doing?
Hello, Cindy. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm doing great. I'm so excited for today.
I'm super excited to chat to you today because I have been a part of your programs or your containers, as you call them. Can you maybe first just tell us a little bit, in a nutshell, all what you do right now as a coach? Because you have various programs for various people, but can you give us a little bit of an overview of what you do?
Yeah, actually, most of my programs are catered to women, although I am also currently working with men on the side. It's not super official. I guess the place where I really come in for people is to support them in finding a pattern back into their body, to find the pathway all the way into their deeper knowing, into this liberated expression, creativity, pleasure, sexuality, and so on.
So, what kind of clients do you have?
So the clients I receive are mostly women. So as I said before, they are artists, they will be mothers, they are entrepreneurs. And I guess what really ties them all together is they have some kind of pioneer and visionary frequency, if you will. They have usually very big dreams. They are women who have huge missions on the planet to fulfill. And I guess I'm coming in to support them on their journey, but also to find that deeper place where they can really become a vessel for their mission and their sole purpose. And I'm just their friend on their journey as they start to fly and experience deep levels of transformation on their own paths.
That's exactly why I invited you, because I think a lot of people that will listen to this podcast, artists, filmmakers, theater makers, we are or we aspire to be pioneers. We have these ideas that have never been done before, face the world, that don't really see what we see. And you're that person that really unlocks the power within people to make it happen. So tell us more about this embodiment, because you come from a path of being a professional dancer, and then you use this work of working with the body within your coaching business, and you even created something called dance manifestation. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, definitely. So I just like to position us as a humanity population into the time where we are right now, where the digital world has literally exploded. People are looking into all kinds of digital assets and digital ways on how to connect with one another. And I feel like there is this place that somewhat, and I see this almost as a pattern coming up in my coaching spaces as well, is that people are truly craving a deeper understanding of themselves, but it's beyond that, right? It's literally beyond the words, it's beyond what they can actually phrase, right? It's in that somatic intelligence. And coming from a dance performing background, of course, the body was my tool. It was my most beautiful asset of expression. And what I've come to realize is that, in a way, as a dancer, and I'm really speaking to that creative part of myself, as a dancer, we very often enter a space of deep creation where we're in the zone. We get into that vibe of, oh my gosh, there's these ideas coming in, we're exploring. And as we move into these deeper layers of our creative cauldron, if I could say it in this way, what really happens is that, and the way that I've understood it in terms of the scientific background, is that we actually drop in the brain waves. And where we start to really hit is actually this brain wave, like the theta brain waves, and the brain waves that actually allow us to almost tap into the imagination, tap into the dream field. And although that's an amazing place to be, It's also a very vulnerable and a very programmable experience. Like in that brainwave where we are deep in the creative process, we are also very suggestible. So I don't know if you know about hypnosis and all of these things.
I have touched on hypnosis, but please do share, because I'm sure that some people have either a very wrong idea of what hypnosis is or might have never experienced it. So please do share and clarify it for those that are listening.
The thing is, we're always being hypnotized, whether we are aware of it or not. We can't actually be suggestible for something that we're not really available for. So, hypnosis is literally just a state of deep opening. And as we are so open in that brainwave and in that coherent state where we are creative, we're also very suggestible. And I really want to tap into that very unique place that I feel like I was really enthralled and entrapped in as a dancer, is that all the while I was in that very creative state and very open, and I was receiving ideas. And even in my dance trainings, there is this thing where we get into this repetitive process, and it really even touches into our tribal consciousness as a group and as a humanity. But in that state, we are also very suggestible, meaning that if we perceive certain criticisms or certain judgments, and especially depending on who you were working with, as a dancer, as an artist, in that state, you become highly suggestible. So the frame that you have about yourself can get a little bit distorted. And so the way that this really like puts us sideways from our what I feel really our soul essence and our mission is that we become so suggestible that all of a sudden we pick up programs and thoughts and belief systems and stories about ourselves that are not always the most ideal. And so in a time when we are so suggestible with all of the medias that are literally feeding our dopamine responses and make us highly addictive, it almost feels like there is this loss of sense of self where we kind of distracted, right? We're being allured or being drawn in to someone else's idea, right? Or someone else's judgment over the world and the way that we perceive. And so there's a lot of that right now in the world where we are exposed to so many different types of messages, and all of a sudden we can spiral into, a world that is somehow a little bit limited, right? And so we kind of suggest idea upon idea, and we kind of run into this roller coaster. And I feel like truly the level where I would love, to even explore more with my women in my coaching spaces and all clients and even other people in conversations, where I'm seeing is that our power is actually our attention, right? The currency of this world is not even money. It's actually our attention. When we can really become dominant and sovereign over where our attention is pulled in and what kinds of programs and suggestions and ideas that we adopt as our own, when we can have full consciousness and awareness around that, and we can start to reorientate, all of this into the thing that we really desire to create, right? You were speaking about being, a speaker for pioneers and, like artists and visionaries, right? It is crucial that we find a place that is as authentic as possible, but also that is tuned in to this multidimensionality that we already are connected to when we are artists, right? And so when it comes to leveraging creations that are not just for our own purpose, but also that maybe have a strong message or something that we really want to bring into the world, right? Because it truly will make a huge difference for humanity. It is crucial that we align with that deeper place within ourselves. So, without going too much on a tangent, but where I feel like we can really come back is in that state of being, of knowing who we are, understanding ourselves as a part of this big puzzle of humanity, and understanding also that we can go even deeper into that dominant, empowered, self asserted state where we can not only decide what kinds of suggestions we desire to bring in, but we can also start to attune to, okay, what is this higher power, almost like this muse essence that we can drop into as artists and truly create and come into that liberated self expression. And so I really can't see anywhere else to go other than coming back to ourselves, coming back to our body, and coming into that deeper network that we all weave together, where we can drop into levels of love, we can drop into levels of coherence together, right? And learn how to negotiate and communicate, but also to negotiate from a place of being fully plugged into our bodies, our essence, our emotions, our thoughts, so that we can not just receive, all of these incredible assets that we can use right now, but we can also use them for a higher purpose. And I feel like coming back to the body is so crucial. What I've come to realize as a dancer is that if I'm moving my body in a certain way, it's almost like that, state with which I'm moving as a dancer, my life is moving. And I started to really see that connection between these two things, like the way that I move my body, the way that I move the stories, the subconscious, right? All of these ideas and these visions that come to me in that very open and vulnerable state of, dancing for the sake of dancing and being in the joy of dancing, right? It's almost like I could create not only the dance that I'm creating in that moment, but I'm also recreating my life. I'm recreating my relationships. I'm recreating even my business and my money situation, right? I can actually assert a level of deep creator energy that is just nothing like anything that we could go to a school and university and learn it from someone else. But there's that deeply dropped in place that has so much power, right? It's just beautiful to watch everyone who's trying dance manifestation to see that there's a direct link and correlation between the way they're dancing and moving and consciously moving certain things out of their system and inviting new thoughts, beliefs, and emotions in, so that they can actually go onto that path of being a pioneer and a visionary, and seeing their dreams come alive.
So can I just summarize or try to summarize all the beautiful gems that you just said? You tell me if either I'm wrong or whether you want to add something or rephrase something. When we are in a deep state of creativity, when you're really in that creative state where ideas are coming, you're dancing, you feel free, you're writing that script, you're performing, we're actually in a state of power, but also of vulnerability, because creativity comes in, but we can also be much more open to criticism. We are very suggestible. It's almost like a vortex that sort of brings everything in. So there's both power and vulnerability from it. But your programs are really about tapping into, okay, which programs and suggestions are we going to let in to that vortex and become more conscious about it, so that we can create from a place of knowing ourselves, so we can create from a place of being assertive. And then in your programs as well, we tap into that liberated place of self-expression. And it is actually through the connection with the body. Your work is not just mental, it's not just intellectual, it's not just we think about it and we have some positive thinking. And no, it's really going hand in hand between the emotions, the intellectual, and the body. There is also a sense of receiving through the body, shifting energy in this 3D reality that we're living, so that the body and also the dance can start creating something new in our reality, basically. But it goes further than just saying an affirmation in words or thinking positively. It's really the body that starts to feel it, dance it, move like it. Would that be a kind of a good summary or representation of what you just said?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, that is brilliant, Cindy. Thank you so much for rephrasing that. And what really comes to mind here with what you said is actually in the way that I also teach dance manifestation is we actually have two very distinct processes. The first process actually isn't even dance manifestation. It's actually dance metamorphosis. It's to really look at, okay, so today, let's say I'm feeling sadness. What is this sadness about? Instead of just sitting there and thinking about it, which can be very useful and very helpful. But there's a level of sadness where we're actually tapping into a somatic memory. And when we can move and bring the body into motion with that sadness and really go and excavate and see, okay, wow, so my sadness is currently in my chest and I'm like giving it presence and attention, I may actually start having memories of things that happened to me that made me feel sad. I'm going very simple now just to break down the process. And so I can then attune and see, okay, does this sadness just desire to move through my body and see where it wants to go and transform instantly? Or is there something else for me to look at, right? And what very often happens is that my clients and students, when they're really dropping into that state where, oh my gosh, like there is something deeper that desires to be released, right? What they start to see is that below the sadness, there might also be rage, there may be guilt, there may be shame. So then they start to move with that emotion, they start to move with that state of being. And this is really one thing that I find so fascinating is that the body very often is so intelligent, we don't even need to intellectually move the sadness. The body naturally finds a pathway to release it if we allow it. And I feel like that's really where, in this frame of history where we're in right now, where everything is becoming super digitalized and like even roboticized, really coming back into that place of somatic intelligence is so huge. Because if you can drop into all of these emotional layers and you can move with your body with that language of expression, it actually not only enables the body to release that level of sadness, but it also opens up the space for, okay, so what else wants to move through now? And maybe then you can start to move back into, oh, let me go and see what love feels like, right? What does it feel like to accept my body as it's moving through the sadness, as I'm feeling my tears streaming down my face? But it's really coming into that place of deep safety within, right? Where you receive full range to all of the emotions. And when we have full range, well, that's when we are the most flexible human beings. And I feel like that's really the place where our power all of a sudden emerges, because we can make space, we can make room for all of that. And sadness that, for example, would have taken me previously weeks and even months to release, like I see this often, that women literally release that sadness within 5 minutes, and that level of sadness never ever comes back about that story. It's actually released, right? And so when we really work with this somatic intelligence in our body, and the way that our body is so good at moving things out of the way that are no longer necessary, because nervous systems, the way that I've understood it and studied, is that they have this one thing that is incredible, is that they know how to bring themselves back to homeostasis. And homeostasis is just a different word for balance, but our body is naturally wired to bring itself back into balance, right? If you're injured, that's the thing, as a dancer, you've seen that. Right? Your body has the capacity to just heal, right? To restore a muscle fiber within days and weeks even, right? And I would even say that with the process of dance metamorphosis, we can even accelerate that level of healing, because we can then go, okay, so why did I injure myself actually? What is this injury about? How can I move with this pain and let it, teach me something deeper, right? And when we really drop into that pathway through the body, it's fascinating, the things that come up. I mean, the stories and the liberation and the relief that I see in my sessions, it's truly incredible. I mean, I've seen women truly healing like difficult traumatic memories like rape and abuse or deep childhood experiences, where it literally took them decades of therapy to even just get to a place of where they could even cope again. And then coming into dance manifestation or dance metamorphosis, and all of a sudden it's like they're reborn. But that's because when we move things through the body, it's so profound.
I want to make it clear for the listeners, your practice of dance manifestation and dance metamorphosis is not just for professional dancers. It is, and it can be practiced by everyone. From the moment that you can just move your body, you can practice it. Am I correct?
That's absolutely right. Yes. I even had a client who was in a wheelchair, and she did the same practice in the way that movement was available to her. And it was so beautiful. It was one of the most incredible sessions that I was able to have, because I could really see how powerful it is. Like when we really drop into the soma, it's not just our physical body, it is the subconscious level that we're moving with. And then our body just becomes an extension of that.
People can follow courses and follow the steps and do it at home in a room and do it alone. You also coach them online, for example. You're soon going to also organize retreats, I believe, to do it as a group. But so it's like some sort of deep, profound meditation through the body. We transform emotions, we release emotions, we manifest new realities. I love that you talk about, you ask the body. It's like asking the body, asking the unconscious, what else can I learn? What else do you want to tell me? Or you almost become a channel for what is higher than us to give us answers. And that I found very powerful. Can we maybe do a real life example of something? Because you talked about deep safety within. I'm currently going through a deep process of finding safety within. I'm doing a huge amount of Krav Maga training. So Krav Maga is a self-defense method. There's a bit of boxing, there's a bit of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, there is learning to how to defend yourself if somebody attacks you with a weapon. It's extremely challenging. When I train 17 hours a week, I can start crying in class like crazy. And I have to sort of go over a lot of challenges. Like we have to play scenarios, where we sort of attacking another person and me hitting another person. It makes me cry. Me being hit makes me cry as well. So there is obviously something that my body wants to tell me. And I'm giving this example of Krav Maga because I know that basically there is a trigger. And while intellectually I know certain parts of the trigger, I'm sure that my subconscious is holding other answers. Another person, it could be whenever they have a conversation with this kind of person, they feel triggered, right? And they feel like the tears are coming up and they might not know why they feel sad or angry or something. So whether it's my Krav Maga example or another trigger, how would you, for example, use dance manifestation, dance metamorphosis to go through that or learn something from what is happening in that moment?
Oh my gosh, I love that. That is incredible. Also, what I want to say here is that I've worked with high performers and like even athletes before. And what I can tell for sure is that whenever we're moving into high intensity with our body and with high impact trainings and things like that, what we're really dropping into is high levels of charge, like electric charge, right? And so it needs to be released. And I mean, I'm not sure if there's something that you do in order to just relax and to just have more of a subtle and flowy movement, but that would what I've seen is that it's a bit like stretching for dancers, right? Like you can train, you can be amazing, but you won't ever be able to be as high impactful if you don't stretch, right? Because stretching is just a way to release tension from your muscles, and it offers the body a way of recharging its natural fuel so that you can come back to training. So here what it sounds like is that this training may actually not just trigger a physiological tense experience, but it may also release certain levels of emotion, which is very natural, right? Even people who lift a lot of weights, when the nervous system is triggered, you also automatically trigger the emotional body. That's just a given. And you will also, of course, trigger the mental body. So I have this framework that's called the 5-body blueprint, where the bodies basically are stacked into one another. So you have the physical body, connecting with all of that. What you're saying, the physical triggers, right? Even when someone physically triggers you, and that will have an impact or a ripple effect into your emotional body, right? That will then have a ripple effect into your mental body, which will then have a ripple effect into your energy and the way that you feel your energy. And so then we have the cosmic body, which is the final piece, which is actually our link to the divine and to, our higher power. And it's also where, creative life force and all of this could be ranged in for those people who are more into the spiritual understanding of life. So my first thing here for you, Cindy, for example, would be to become very curious about this sadness and to really go, I mean, I said sadness, right? But just the fact that it makes you want to cry. what is that actually about? And to take that into a dance practice where literally you don't move your body until your body like naturally wants to move there, right? So it's almost like you allow the emotion to take over your body, and then to see, okay, where does my body want to go with this? And to offer the body maybe, a different terrain of exploration with this feeling sensation. So here we're really specifically looking at a feeling sensation. Sometimes we could also go into a specific memory, right? Maybe if every time you go into your training, this memory comes up of, I don't know, something that you link it with hitting someone else or being hit or the pain that it may produce, to bring that memory then into your practice and to really sit or lie down there and allow that memory or that state of being to take over your body. And then to slowly and gently ask your body to show you where it desires to move with that. Okay. And to see, because what it sounds like here is that you may have your training, you do your warm up, you do your things. And then there's this one thing where okay, now I need to go and do this exact move or do this fighting exercise, right? So you always take the body through almost through the same loop, right? So here it's about interrupting that same loop that you normally take your body with and to allow the body to create its own way out, right? And to really drop in and get super curious. And even if that means that you're going to lie down for, I don't know, 10 minutes and your body literally doesn't want to move, to allow your body to have that, right? And to go onto this inquiry and literally watch yourself almost like being on the outside and witness yourself as your body moves or doesn't move. What does it desire to do? Does it want to stretch, right? To offer the body a way to deal with that emotion, but to deal with it in a very different physiological pathway. And then to see, okay, so now that you've moved, what else is there? Was there another emotion? Is there a story that's linked to that? And then, okay, so there was a story about, I don't know, someone when you were a child, something happened, right? You may have seen someone fighting. I don't know, I'm just making it up now. And so you just offer your body the opportunity to tell that story one more time, to tell that memory one more time in its own way. It could be very mundane things, right? Or you may also practice really hitting, for example, or being like almost as if you were falling over, but to see how your body creatively deals with that emotion or deals with that state in a different way or through a different somatic pattern than it is used to. And I'd be curious to hear how that goes for you and what happens, because very often our body has a much better way to deal with high intensity and emotions than our mind has. So here the mind really takes a step back and is literally just a witness of the body. So you have the body doing what it needs to do, and you're just observing and accompanying the body and offering it. It's almost like catching water, right? Oh, okay, so that's where it goes. And now we're going here, and now we're going here. And so it's really about finding a way to move through this with a different flow.
Thank you so much, Lisy, because I've been journaling about it already. I've been meditating in silence and in stillness about it. But it is true, I've never used your dance metamorphosis, dance manifestation practice. I think I will tap into something that is very powerful and release something because, like you said, Krav Maga is extremely intense. It creates a lot of electricity, physically and emotionally. Asking the body to tell the story one more time. I think also maybe asking the body, may you release whatever needs to be released now and make myself dance for the purpose of release, I think might be very powerful as well. So I'll definitely let you know how that goes.
Oh, definitely. And then if you want an advanced student like perk, what you can then do is after you've told the story again, how would you tell the story in hindsight from a place of power, from a place of, oh my gosh, I've done it and it felt amazing. And I felt so connected with myself. And now it's like a new status quo, because that's truly what this practice is about. It's not just to release emotion, which is the dance metamorphosis aspect of it, but it's also the dance manifestation aspect of it is to call in a new level of creation. So who is this Cindy who is capable of making peace with that experience so that she can train her body. I mean, you may have a completely different purpose, but I'm just saying, to train her body to get to the next level, what does she feel and look like, right? And how can you invite her into your practice and let her teach you, right? So here we're now more on the dance manifestation aspect, where you're really calling the self of the future who has already rounded up that experience with pleasure and power, and she brings a teaching in as well. And that's really where you become available to then have a completely different experience of what it is currently doing for you.
Thank you so much, Lisy. That is very powerful. I love what you said, asking the body, how can I tell this story now from a place of power? And also tapping into our future self, or the who we will be when we are a wiser human being, and what the message is from that energy, from that energetic field. I would like to move on to other things that really touched me while I was in your containers and in your programs. You very often talk about the zone of genius. And I love that phrasing, because when I was in your containers, often when you read a book or whatever, it talks about your strength. What are your strengths? What are your skills? But you talk about the zone of genius of people. What do you mean by that? And how can artists use that concept to even tap more into their full potential?
Oh my gosh, I love this question so much. And no one's ever asked me that question, actually. It's so interesting. I knew you were going to have some amazing questions for me. So, the zone of genius really is, I mean, if you really look at the way that high level meditation teachers speak about this place, I would really put it together as this, it's like a trance zone. It's like being in trance. It's like being in a certain elevated state where you are pure lucidity in motion, right? It's you see the colors around you. It's a state of being so alive and supercharged with life, right? And I feel like artists, we naturally drop into that place. I mean, if you recall times in your childhood, and this is for everyone, you're literally playing and you don't even see time passing by. It's just you're so enthralled in that. You're so focused. You're so connected with something, right? I remember having moments of deep connection in nature. Literally, I remember on my world trip, I had this. I had the opportunity of staying in a friend's villa for a few days, all by myself, and there was this pool outside. And I was literally in the water, and all of a sudden it started raining. It was outdoors, of course, and I was looking at a snail literally going down like a branch of a plant. And I was just in the water and I was feeling fully connected with nature. The rain was dropping on my skin. And I remember having a dance in the water there, and I felt so connected. And I know that so many brilliant ideas came to me during that short time. It was maybe 15 or 20 minutes that I was outside in that pool. But it was just, that's what I mean with being in the zone. You are actually fully plugged into life itself, right? All of your senses are supercharged and super, like, all the like if we were octopuses, we would have all our tendrils out and literally plugged into everything. To me, that's what the zone of genius is about, is when we are aware of ourselves being a part, like a cohesive, coherent part of the whole universe, and where it's almost like we become a little bit transcendental because we're more energy than matter, if, in a way, but we're also plugged into the matter. So it's not really we're gone. We're still here very much. And I feel like being in that zone, that's really where love can touch us. That's really a state where creativity can come through, the best ideas can come through. And what I also want to say is this is not, it's very often not even a set up space. Like, I didn't decide, oh, I'm going to go and have a transcendental moment in the pool with the snail, right? That's not what I was thinking about. It literally happened. And so it's not that we can't control it. Of course, we can set certain things up so that it could happen more often. But the truth being, you could have an eureka moment while being in the shower and being completely lucid of where you are and like the life you've lived and the things you're about to do. You could literally drop into that transcendental state doing the most mundane things. Actually, I find that doing very repetitive things can be super transcendental because it kind of puts you into this hypnotic, suggestible state, because you kind of, it's like some people get it, for example, when they're driving, right? They're driving, they're going somewhere, but it's like they're here, but they're also zoned out in a way, right? It's all the thoughts are coming through. And so I feel like that's what the zone of genius really is about. And we can definitely train to make ourselves more and more available for that state of being. And I feel like it's so healing, especially for artists and especially performers, where we very often receive suggestions, right? If you've been a dancer, you know that very often you have a choreography you're working with, and so you need to kind of proceed to all of the things that they're telling you. And so of course you're going to do that, and you love doing that, but you need to have these certain windows where you can just literally drop in and allow your body to, yeah, find its own pathway where there are no rules, basically. And that state of there are no rules, it's very healing for artists, because that's really where I feel we can totally attune with our highest level of creation, and things can come to us that we could never think about them, right? It's like they come in through a state, through a desire, through a vision. And so it's primordial for us to have windows like that in our day-to-day life, where we can literally just drop all of the pressures of the world and come into that place, into that safe temple space where we are in union with our highest consciousness, but also in union with our most material frame, which is our physical body.
So I can really recognize myself in those moments where I'm really deeply connected with my creativity, with feeling alive, with, like feeling unstoppable. You said we need like these little periods of, or these moments of nothingness, being in the shower, doing repetitive movements. Is there any way we can use dance manifestation or dance metamorphosis to train ourselves? Because you said we can train ourselves to tap into the zone of genius more and more. Is there any way we can use your practice that you developed to tap into the zone of genius?
Oh, yeah, totally. That's what the practice is about. It doesn't mean that that zone of genius is going to come in every single time you practice, but it's like you're making yourself available. I always say this, like we always have muses like spinning around like little fairies, and they're literally just waiting for an opening where they could sprinkle that little magic. And I feel like when we drop into dance manifestation and dance metamorphosis and just move our bodies and just enter, for sometimes painters can also have this, where they have moments of just like throwing paint on their canvas and it's no rules, but they start to, it's almost like we start to shed the different constrictions that we've taken on through our day-to-day life, and all of a sudden we open up to, oh, there's all these possibilities, right? But the thing is, I find that when we bring our body into this equation, it is so much easier. And that's why I feel that dance metamorphosis and dance manifestation can be so powerful, because it literally is about just allowing expression, right? It's allowing expression physiologically, it's allowing expression emotionally, mentally, right? You really coming into that coherent state where, your right side and your left side enter a certain choreography together, a certain dance together. And so with that, you also have your rational and your imaginative brain. Those two hemispheres also start to create connection together. And I feel like the more we build these synapses of connection, the more we master that state and we are less afraid of that state. Like I remember sometimes being in dance studios like many years ago and entering that state. I'm like, oh my gosh, where am I going? I completely lost the plot. Like, let me come back to my plie exercise or whatever I was doing. But the thing is, I know today that those were the moments where, had I allowed the opening, had I allowed myself to go into this unknown and maybe stay there a little longer, maybe my training would have been completely different. Because entering the training space through the transcendental field is so much fun, because you could literally practice in advance, right? In advance, probing your body to become the most impactful, the most powerful, right? Envisioning yourself, I don't know, doing 5 pirouettes instead of 4, and just envisioning yourself and really practicing and feeling into that state of who would I be if I had already created that for myself, that experience? What would be the feelings and the mind that I would have? And so we can really connect through that zone of genius. We can really connect to a higher level of performance. And all of this with a playful state. Let me see what else I could create today. There are no rules, and that no rules can be very liberating.
So we talked about the zone of genius and being fully connected, feeling fully alive, tapping into that full potential. Now I want to talk about the other side, when we as artists are really feeling the burnout. And I remember at some point when I was in your container, in your program, I was at a crossroad of my career, and I was really in burnout state and not connected at all with where I was going next. That's also a reality of artists, whether you have the writer's block, or whether you're shifting a little bit in your creative expression, or whether you don't know when the next gig is, whatever. But I remember a big piece of coaching you gave me is, I'm going to paraphrase it and you will add to it and say it with your words. But it was somewhere around the lines of, number one, it was, Cindy, can you trust that you can hold both spaces, and the positive and the negative sort of thing, and the heavy and the light, and still move forwards and trust that you're moving forward? So there was really this idea of, it's not just about positive thinking, accept that you're low. And it's not because all of a sudden you're low that everything stops. You can hold both spaces and still be powerful. And then the second thing is, you asked me if I could trust that whatever seed I had planted was still growing, even though at the moment I felt so low. And it's not because in that moment in time I was not thinking positively and I couldn't put positive words on what was going to happen next, that my seeds that I had planted all of a sudden were starting to rot. So can you also give us a little bit of your approach to this, of how you balance really these mixed feelings of when we feel low as artists?
Yes, absolutely. I freaking loved what you said, because I think that a lot of artists find themselves in that place, and it's actually a good place to be. And the reason being is that it's like the creative process has its own way, right? The muse will come in and sprinkle her magic when she's ready. But sometimes we don't really know what is really coming through and what we can make ourselves available for, and whether we're even capable of holding it. And what I've come to see is that, and this is not just artists, this is just us being in the pit of life, we are continuously going through this metamorphosis experience, like from the caterpillar to the butterfly, from the caterpillar to the butterfly. And so we're going through these processes of shedding the old life and making ourselves available for the new. But sometimes that experience of making ourselves available for the new while we're still shedding the old life, it's like we're in the middle of, like new life desiring to come through. We don't really know what it looks like yet. So truly, we're stepping into the unknown. And that unknown can be very scary, because we have this tendency as humans, and this is really our reptilian brain literally doing what it's good at, which is to make sure we survive. So it brings the attention to the thing that we already have lived, and we can hold on to it, and this feels comfortable, and this is good, right? But it's like, when we're artists, we need to be on that edge, right? Because it's on that edge that we're constantly creating and bringing new life in and bringing new creativity in. So for me, that moment that you experienced in your career transitions and the things that were coming through, it literally was that, is you're walking in the old world, but you're also feeling the new world coming in. And so the trick is to not try to go back to the old world and create, your fixation around this and hold yourself in safety. But it's to understand that, no, you are walking with the old world and with the new world you're creating, and you're perfectly safe. It's actually a sign that you're growing and that you're evolving, and that this big force field of life is literally bringing you into this new wave of creation. And so it's about really remaining available and trusting that you can hold both, and that there are many things that sometimes we sow in the past. It just takes a long time for them to spring forth. And I'm sure that now, from the place where you're at, what's your take on that when you look back at that time of transition?
Oh, well, the transition can be painful and discomfortable. And when you see a butterfly getting out of its cocoon, it doesn't feel like it's going out smoothly. It's got to have to push a little bit to get out of there. And that's the sensation that I had at the time. And I love what you're saying about there is the new world that you're already walking in and the old world. And I feel there was, it's almost like I was living in two universes at the time. There was Cindy that was already bigger and wiser than she had been, but the only successes that I had known were part of old Cindy. But it was almost like I had to grieve that old Cindy because the old Cindy was only, while I thought it was like amazing what I had achieved, there was so much more waiting for me. But it was like saying, no, that was just kindergarten. That was chapter one, you know? And there is also the fear of walking into that new world. But it's exactly like, like you explained it, is those two worlds are walking in parallel. And those two motorways are still in parallel, but at some point they're going to split. But while they're in parallel, it can be very uncomfortable. And you got to have patience, and acceptance, resilience to walk through it.
Yes, totally. Because I think that as an artist, we're really here to reinvent ourselves completely, right? We're always innovating. But in order to be innovative, we have to allow the new to come touch us. And sometimes it doesn't look the way that we expect it to look. And that's the beauty about it, is that it's like just this reinvention wheel. It can be a handful for many artists and creatives, because it's like, okay, so wait, so here's my little human, like trying to do the human things, but then there's this, this big creation force field, like pumping, you've got this, like let's bring in the new world right through you. And it can be exhilarating too. I think that although we have a lot of grieving processes to overmount when we go through this reinvention, I also feel like it definitely is a sign of healthy growth. And I feel like as artists, that's also one of the levels that we've come here to master, is to master ourselves. And it's almost like to become, it's like we go through this, we're transcending ourselves continuously. And I feel like that's also one of the layers why as artists we can tap into that transcendental state so well, because we're always overcoming ourselves, we're always recreating something, from the grounds up, right? It's like literally the phoenix, that drops back into ashes and then, rebirth again. Like all of these cycles will come for us. And it's important that we understand that it's not a death and it's not the end. It's a reinvention. A rebirth is probably waiting to come get you. And in the meantime, have fun. In the meantime, work your training, like work your magic, keep mastering your art, keep working and just crafting your field, because there will be a place where also the higher creation comes when you are ready for it too. It's a bit like the saying that the master will appear when the student is ready. And I feel like with creation and creative processes, it can be very much like that. I had so many beautiful conversations with dancers, and even like dancers reinventing themselves, later in their career. But it's like, oh my gosh, thank God that chapter didn't come earlier. I would not have been ready for it, right? I needed to master more of myself in certain ways, and it just wasn't available to me in any other way.
That's also so true. Sometimes we don't realize how much we have to be ready for the next chapter emotionally. And that can be in terms of conflict resolution, in terms of leadership, in terms of handling criticism that might come through social media, whatever that is, right? It might be a lot of things. Also, I was sharing about how uncomfortable it was to go through that transition. And you mentioned that these moments of growth can also be exhilarating. And that is so true, because there is a huge amount of really high, peak, joyful moments with it. In your coaching, you also talk about the constant sort of joy. So it's also to sort of manage your really highs and those really lows, where artists, we can really fall really low and we can go really high as well. So tell us more about this concept of what is constant in energetically speaking, that we should also be searching for.
I would love to actually, oh my gosh, I love this. I would absolutely love to bring in this understanding around feminine and masculine energy, and not as a gender base, because we have both of these and we can tap into both of these energies ourselves. But it's the juicy constants really is, if you would compare the masculine energy to be like the rock in the ocean, or even like the bed of the ocean, and the feminine energy is the waves, the water, like this fluid essence. And one day she's up and one day she's down, and some days she's super quiet, and some day, right, she's constantly dancing with her extremes and with her full range. And then the bottom of the ocean, it's always stable, right? Maybe it moves a little bit, but it doesn't really move that much, right? Where the most movement is in the waves of the ocean. So drawing up a juicy constance of a state, or a state of being, or even a feeling sensation, I feel is very beneficial, especially when we are artists, and if we have, certain neurodivergent tendencies, which most of us do. There's a lot of studies right now around ADHD, neurodivergence, and all of that. And a lot of the women who come into my field, funny enough, of course, not surprised at all, will have certain levels of neurodivergence, because they are such creatives. They're very passionate. So they have a state of being that is very modulable, right? It can be in high excited states. And then, okay, then we have the face down, because the nervous system is always trying to pull itself back into homeostasis. So the juicy constants isn't actually excitement, which what most people think it is, right? The juicy constants is literally you're at peace, and then it's a little bit more than that, right? Imagine if you're very low in that scale, the juicy constants will feel reachable. Whereas if you're trying to go to joy and excitement and ecstaticness, right, that's going to feel very far away. And because on the spectrum, it's so much further. So you're going to have to move through a lot of emotions in order to even get to the place of joy. But if you're in depression, or if you're in anxiety, or in a state of rage, for example, coming back to a juicy constant, even if it's just temporarily, and to practice going back to that state of the juicy constant, can be a very good training for everyday life, because when we're going through life as artists and creatives, we will have highs and we will have lows, right? But coming back to that juicy constant, understanding what it feels and looks like in our state and in our body, is a way to just calibrate everything, not just our physical body, but also our emotions, our thoughts, right? And to just basically bring back things to reality, to relativize things, right? Okay, it could be so much worse than that. And I mean, this is not about like spiritually bypassing yourself, or like pretending. This isn't that at all. It's really about bringing yourself into that place. Oh, no, there's something else available for me. And what's fun is that in that juicy constant, you can literally watch people enjoy, you can watch people enrage, and you can keep coming back to that, right? And it's your own unique signature of coherence. And so practicing that, and practicing that with the consciousness and the awareness that actually you're bringing yourself back to that level of, okay, I've got this, we're on the roll, it's fine, we're flowing. Okay, today is a bit of a terrible day, but we can bring ourselves back, right? It's just a way to just navigate the meantime, right? Meanwhile, we wait for our desire to come into fruition, and how to manifest more easily. And so, here, so coming back to this feminine and masculine energy, what I see is that we really need both. We need both of those energies. And the juicy constance really holds that masculine frame, where so that whenever we're having our highs and our lows, we can come back to a safe space. You were talking about feeling safety, right? Before. And I feel like this is so, so important, because our level of safety and security, especially that internal safety and security, is paramount, especially for creators and passionate people, because sometimes, we have huge influxes of money, and then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, it's ebb time, there's nothing left. And coming back to that place of power within actually allows you not only to deal with life's challenges in the most regulated way, but it also energetically makes you very magnetic for the highest and best things. And that's really something that, if we want to take that conversation further on the energetic scale, we can. But it's really that place of where our nervous system can regulate more quickly, can become more resilient. It also has an electrical charge with the universe. And it's like life starts to respond to us in a different way. And I've seen this time and time again, where, if you've held that juicy constance for a long period of time, all of a sudden it may not look like much in the beginning, but I've seen it so often that, especially artists, actually, I don't know why, but it just sounds like artists are very good at this. It's all of a sudden they land a gig that just came out of the blue, where literally no one could even predict that this could happen. Opportunities, fundings, like projects, like collaborations, things literally appearing out of nowhere. And that's because, well, you've been regulating, you've been in your juicy constance, you've been available, right? To remaining open, because that's the thing. You have given yourself permission to remain receptive, even in the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. When you can come back to that regulated state, it actually creates an energetic ripple effect into the universe, when the universe starts to respond to you in a very different and more coherent way, actually more and more coherent as you move through.
Could you also use dance metamorphosis, dance manifestation for this? And for example, while you're dancing, ask the body, please show me or make me feel what this juicy constant is? Could that be a way of tapping into it?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. You can use dance manifestation for so many things. I'm so excited about this just being the beginning of this exploration, because I feel like, I'm learning so much, even watching my students and clients going into that, into those experiences. I mean, only recently I had a woman who landed her first, I think, 25K quarter. That's huge for someone who maybe made that in a year. It's just truly phenomenal, the things that can become available to us when we are in that deep receptive state. And I feel like when we dance, what really happens is we're charging the pressure off of a body. And so, as I said before, whatever happens in the body has a ripple effect all the way out into our cosmic body. So it's all the way out into the universe. So we start emitting a whole new signal. And I mean, I'm not the first one like talking about this. Like, there are lots of like research and scientific projects that are being done right now, where our frequency is being measured. For example, during meditations, they're looking into studying the heart coherence and the magnetic field of the heart, and how that truly has an impact when you bring someone who is in their heart, who has a coherent nervous system, and you bring them, for example, into a place like a prison, that actually the prisoners, they start to regulate as well, because our nervous systems, and this is really something that I find so fascinating, and I'm so excited to continue studying this for the rest of my life, is how our nervous systems actually calibrate with one another, and how we can really feel, not just someone's words, but we can feel their whole state of being when they're in their bodily expression, and how we can really learn from one another, but also how we can come back into connection, to a deep connection with humanity, with the things that really matter, with truly evolving our species to a level of just being humanely connected. Because I feel like that's really where, there's right now, I hear this very often, where people are saying, oh, but in all this digitalized world, it looks like the youth is going lost and we don't know how to come back. I'm like, the way to come back is you come back to your body and to your senses, right? Because there is a way on how our body and our senses can really connect with other human beings. And this works beyond just the physical space. I mean, I've seen this time and time again, where the women who come into my field, like we have women from Australia, from the US, from Europe, from Africa. I mean, I have worked with clients all over the world. And when we come back, when we come into our online spaces, because I work mainly online, it's fascinating the things, the ripple effects that take place in these women's lives, although they're on the complete other side of the planet. But it's almost like there is this energetic web that is weaving through, and that is connecting and plugging us into each other. And I feel like um, this is really one of my visions for the future is I feel that especially today, we need humans who are deeply connected with their body and deeply connected with their power, deeply connected with that life force energy that is coursing through them, because that's truly where the sanity of this planet is. Like the sanity is in our physiological responses, in the way that we hold conversation, in the way that we can negotiate and renegotiate things. It's just way too easy to pull the plug, on relationships nowadays. Like you literally can just, go get a new partner on Tinder if you wanted to, like literally tomorrow if you wanted to, like even in 5 minutes, right? And I'm like, that can't be it. That can't be where we create this life from. It's really about creating a space where we can land in deep, safe somatic intelligence and emotional and mental coherence and truly weave that and share that with one another.
Thank you so much, Lizzie, for all these really powerful gems that you've been sharing. If people want to work with you, if people want to know more about your work, not just about your coaching programs and following you on social media, but also because you're an author, about the books you've written, where can they find out more about you, your work on social media, and also find your books?
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. Yeah. So I can be found on all the medias with at Lisy Butterfly or lisybutterfly.com. And I think that's probably the best place to go. I really am quite active on Facebook and on Instagram. And yeah, I would love for people to reach out if they have questions or if they desire to deepen these conversations more. I'd be so happy to talk to them for sure.
Thank you so much, Lizzie. And also, we've been chatting about perhaps having a part two about abundance and money and all to do with the energetic field of money and artistry. So I'm really looking forward to have a part two with you.
Oh, I'm so excited about that. That's one of my favorite topics.
Let's make it happen soon.
Yes. Thank you for having me on, Cindy.